years in the future, when people remember the years 2017 through 2018, I think that the legacy will be that this was a time when the media, certain elements of the federal government, a lot of the public basically tried to bring this country to either a civil war or the overthrow of a democratically elected president. And the memo is the perfect cherry on top for this whole campaign that's based on actual contempt for the laws of the country that these people claim to being upholding to be upholding. Sorry, but there's a whole issue here where the Democrats, remember, used to be a party that they were the ones that were talking about better oversight of the intelligence services and the federal government, and keeping these CIA spooks in line and things like that. Well, look at how it's all come full circle, and it's further evidence that the political um, the political game where people say, oh, being affiliated with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, that it means anything. One of the biggest lies that I see is that people like to claim that because Robert Mueller or James Comey is a registered Republican, that their actions cannot be construed as some sort of plot that will be uncovered and has been uncovered by now to undermine the authority of the new president, who happens to be a Republican too, Donald Trump. Being affiliated with a political party doesn't really mean anything. There are certainly people within both parties that just flow with the way that the rest of the country is going. They don't really have any sound principles. And the best evidence of that is Comey, James Comey, this guy who you bring him in front of Congress and people ask him questions, and his whole reaction is, Jiminy Willikers, I can't believe that anybody would actually question the fact that I have all these agents running around and leaking shit and putting things out there that nobody can verify and that ends up not being true. He goes in front of Congress, behaves like some sort of person who had his rug peed on by a bunch of people that broke into it. He gave basically the Big Lebowski reaction the whole time in Congress. And, today, or was it yesterday? I don't know. His reaction to the release of the Nunes memo was, "That's it, that's it." And reading the memo on the first pass yesterday, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to go back and look up some other points, because it's only 4 pages, but it's 4 pages that give a good summary of what's been going on. His reaction to his own agents and other members of the Justice Department using unverified information that in many cases they themselves didn't believe, and that they knew originated from a source that was had a, a clear bias against the target of the information his reaction to that was, "That's it." And since then, you see that the FBI has just become more and more unresponsive to accountability. They believe that they can use information that's unverifiable. First of all, it's unverifiable. Second of all, it's incredible that anybody would believe the crap that was in the dossier. And it was leaked to the public, and nobody cared. They said, "Oh, the public has a right to know in that case." And I was reading just now while I was preparing to get on here, the reaction from Mark Penn in The Hill. And he says both the New York Times, I'll just show it briefly. I'm not trying to make this a long federal case, if you pardon the pun, for this video. But he says both the New York Times and the Washington Post yesterday ran editorials calling for prior restraint on a memo written by the duly elected chairman of the House Intelligence Committee after he and his staff reviewed classified documents related to the so-called Russia investigation. These editorials are a stain on American journalism, much like the Japanese internment camps were a stain on the record of the Supreme Court. They should, and I think will over the time, regret them. And then he said, "I have no idea what is in the memo, but it's a memo. It's speech from the very staff and people our Constitution assigns to oversee the desk." So this is the most important sentence. our Constitution assigns to oversee the Justice Department and the FBI. And the elected officials who wrote it think I should see it. The people who don't want me to see it are the elected officials and leaders of the Democratic Party, the institutions and individuals whose actions are being reviewed, and several of the same newspapers that went to court to publish the Pentagon Papers. For about a year, anyone who wanted to could read the secret dossier prepared by, he got it wrong, but Fusion GPS, and paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party. I urge people to read it. It's obvious nonsense. It's not unverified. It's been discredited. It should say it's not only unverified, it's been discredited. Its major allegations, aside from being preposterous, have no basis in fact. The idea that anything could be found in it that is true, such as that Trump advisor Carter Page went to Moscow, does not rehabilitate it. And it says that a fired FBI director, James Comey, leaked memos he wrote on his own with no oversight, supervision, or review, and the New York Times gladly printed reports of them. The Washington Post even editorialized that the people should see the memos. We heard no argument from either newspaper then that publishing these Comey memos would damage the presidency or be misleading. So go ahead and read the rest of that article. I have the link below. It's just I'm not trying to go too long today. But this is from Mark Penn, a former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton in her 2008 campaign and to Bill Clinton in the 1996 campaign. And this somebody he you know, you don't always have to like the source of the information, but you should at least consider whether information is important. Okay, Mark Penn, obviously people can conjecture whether he's a reliable person to talk about anything, but what about that article and that opinion doesn't ring true? The fact is that the elected members of Congress are the ones that are responsible to us. And when they decide of their own volition to publicize something through an agreed legal process, which they did go through to release the memo to the public, with the permission of the White House, then there is no reason to start yelling at them, oh, you're ruining the integrity of the intelligence service relationship with the White House and Congress and whatever. I'm sorry, but what ruined that relationship was the knowledge now that these intelligence services, they believe they're a law unto themselves. But listen, I want to ask you guys a question. Do you think that, and I have plenty of criticism for Congress, but who do you think is more accountable to you? Who do you think has to answer to you, at least on paper? I don't know about in reality. Who do you think has to answer to you? Congress or the FBI? If you come to the FBI complaining about issues that you've been having in your district, who do you complain? Can you do that with the FBI? No, you can't. The FBI does not have to listen to you. They're basically an agency, they've had a few accomplishments in their existence, but they've degraded to the point of being a political, a factory for settling political scores, and that's what the Obama administration changed them into. The Bush administration, I'm not sure if they were completely competent in running the FBI. Obviously, there were issues with them too, but people have to really wisen up. I watched a video, half hour ago from Brandon Tatum, a former police officer, talking about whether, whether this is a key moment for the Mueller investigation. And he says that as a police officer, former police officer, is a police officer, I think in Tucson or some other city in Arizona, when you would seize things or arrest somebody based on false pretenses, the evidence was thrown out of court, and that could very well happen with these trial investigations against Michael Flynn and against that guy Paul Manafort, the former head of the Trump campaign, and in fact against that George Papadopoulos guy. All of those court cases could be thrown out of court because the very root of the investigation was false. Now, what the Democrats will come forth and contend, well, there were other reasons for starting the investigation. But in the meantime, I think that will be overwhelmed. See, they wanted to release their own memo that they thought would discredit this one. But for one thing, there's going to be a week until that memo gets released. Between the last memo and the new memo, there's going to be a week until that gets released. And actually, what would be funny, I don't know if he should do this, but if the committee votes to release that memo, but President Trump still has the authority to say no, I object to this memo being released. So he could do that. I mean, it's a fact. That's the way the process works. I don't know if he'll do that. By that time, it might not even matter, because in my opinion, what could happen is that people will not just be satisfied with the memo. People of both sides, they'll say, well, this isn't enough. We have to see the real facts. We need the transcripts. And if you see in those transcripts officials like Andrew McCabe, like some of these CIA officers, like some of these Department of Justice people, saying things under oath that are now known to be false in their testimony from the past year, then you're really going to see the FBI teetering on the edge of collapse. And the person who's most to blame for that, James Comey. There's one person who's most to blame for that. That's James Comey. And then after that, you could talk about Loretta Lynch, and you could talk about President Obama, and the Clintons. They could, of course, they knew that they could get this through, but who let them go away with it? It wasn't as if they did all this by themselves. The federal government enlisted to help these people basically cop out of the fact that they lost an election that they had every advantage in. So that's about it. Please comment below to see all my other videos and see all my other links. And that's all I have for right now, and I'll talk to you guys later.